Inside the incredible world of prehistoric women hunters, these women didn't just survive, they ruled the wild. 10,000 years ago, survival wasn't a man's game. In these forgotten tribes, women hunted, butchered, and led. Their strength wasn't told in history books, but it was carved into the bones of every beast they brought home. Today we'll uncover how these prehistoric women formed survival networks, turned meat into medicine, and raised entire generations. And what they did next, it might just rewrite everything you thought you knew about ancient gender roles. Today we'll uncover how these prehistoric women formed survival networks that kept entire communities alive. How they hunted together using strategies that rivaled modern military tactics. How they turned meat into medicine that healed wounds and prevented disease. And how they raised generations strong enough to conquer ice ages. And what they did next, it might just rewrite everything you thought you knew about ancient gender roles. For over a century, we got it wrong. When archaeologists found ancient graves containing weapons and hunting tools, they automatically assumed male warrior. Case closed. But in 2020, everything changed. A 9,000-year-old burial site in the Peruvian Andes revealed something shocking. The skeleton, buried with a hunter's toolkit, big game hunting weapons, projectile points, and tools for butchering large animals, belonged to a woman. Not just any woman, an elite hunter. When researchers examined the bones, they found upper body development consistent with repeated spear throwing. Her bone density showed years of carrying heavy loads across mountains. Her teeth revealed a protein-rich diet, the diet of a successful hunter. This discovery forced scientists to re-examine hundreds of previously studied sites across the Americas. The results were staggering. Analysis of 107 burial sites from the Americas revealed that between 30 to 50% of hunters in ancient societies were women. Not exceptions, not anomalies. Women hunters were the norm. So how did they do it? The secret wasn't individual strength. It was something far more powerful. Prehistoric women didn't hunt alone. They built intricate survival networks, bonds between mothers, daughters, sisters, and unrelated women that formed the backbone of community survival. These weren't casual friendships. These were calculated alliances. An experienced hunter would mentor 3 or 4 younger women, teaching them not just how to throw a spear, but how to read weather patterns, predict animal migration, identify which plants could mask human scent. Knowledge was currency, and women were the bankers. Here's what's fascinating. Pregnancy and nursing didn't exclude women from hunting. It integrated them deeper into the network. While nursing mothers might focus on smaller game or trap setting closer to camp, they maintained their role in the network, teaching, strategizing, processing kills. The network operated on specialization. Not every woman needed to chase down elk. Some became experts in trap construction. Others mastered the art of reading tracks. Some specialized in butchering and preservation. Together, they formed something unprecedented, the world's first collaborative hunting corporations. And the results? Devastating efficiency. Research shows that collaborative female hunting groups often brought in more consistent game than individual male hunters. Why? Men might bring down the biggest kills, but women brought home protein consistently, week after week, month after month. That consistency meant survival during the lean seasons. It meant children who didn't starve when the men returned empty-handed. The survival network extended beyond the hunt. Women who stayed at camp while others hunted would nurse each other's children, share knowledge of medicinal plants, defend the settlement. This created something revolutionary: redundancy. If one woman fell ill or died in childbirth, others immediately absorbed her children, her knowledge, and her role. No orphans, no lost knowledge. And around the fires at night, they shared something even more valuable than meat: information. Which valleys held game in winter, which streams the herds would cross, where predators denned, how to read the stars for navigation. This accumulated knowledge, passed mother to daughter, created an information advantage that could mean the difference between feast and famine. The sisterhood of the hunt wasn't just social, it was survival architecture, and it worked for tens of thousands of years. But survival networks were just the foundation. Now watch what happened when these women actually hunted. Forget everything you've seen in movies. Prehistoric hunting wasn't about chasing animals with clubs. It was warfare, pure strategy. A typical hunt began days before the kill. Scouts would track herds, noting their patterns, where they drank, where they bedded down, their escape routes. The night before the hunting party would gather, the lead hunter, often a woman in her 40s or 50s, with decades of experience, would outline the strategy. These weren't ambushes. They were orchestrated military operations. Women would position themselves at choke points hours before sunrise, some near water sources, others blocking escape routes. Younger hunters stationed where they could drive prey toward the killers. Then, they'd wait, motionless, sometimes for hours. Here's where female physiology became an advantage. Studies show women have higher pain tolerance and better endurance than men for sustained effort. While male hunters excelled at explosive power short, intense chases, women could hold position for hours without cramping or fatigue. When the moment came, execution was surgical. Drivers would reveal themselves, creating just enough pressure to move the herd, not stampede it. Control was everything. The animals would funnel into the kill zone, where experienced hunters waited. And here's what separates humans from every other predator. We didn't just use strength, we used technology. The atlatl, a spear thrower that increased velocity by 60%, was the great equalizer. It turned a woman of average strength into a killing machine capable of bringing down animals 5 times her size. Biomechanical analysis shows women's lower center of gravity and greater flexibility actually made them more accurate with atlatl throws at medium range. Not weaker hunters, different hunters, and in many cases, deadlier. But the most impressive part wasn't the kill, it was what happened next. Within minutes, the butchering began. Not at camp, right there. Why? A full-grown elk weighs 700 pounds. You can't carry that. You have to process it on site. Every woman had a role. Some removed hide valuable for clothing and shelter. Others extracted organs, the most nutritious parts, eaten first. Others began sectioning muscle groups for transport. Tendons became thread and bowstrings. Bones became tools and weapons. Bladders became water carriers. Hooves boiled down to glue. Zero waste. Total efficiency. The carryback was a team effort. Weight distributed. Frequent rotations. The network in action. And when they returned, they didn't return as individuals. They returned as providers for the entire tribe. Distribution followed complex social rules. Elders ate first, then nursing mothers, then children, finally other adults, and always the children watched, learning, absorbing, preparing for the day they joined the hunt. The hunting strategies passed down through these networks weren't written, they were lived, breathed, embodied, generation after generation. But these women weren't just hunters. They were the world's first pharmacologists. Modern medicine recognizes what these women knew instinctively. Meat isn't just food, it's medicine. Bone marrow, the fatty substance inside long bones, contains stem cells, growth factors, and immunoglobulins. In modern terms, it's a superfood that boosts immune function. Prehistoric women roasted bones specifically to extract marrow, feeding it to sick children and injured hunters. Organ meat, especially liver, contains vitamin A, iron, and B vitamins at concentrations impossible to obtain from plant sources. Women knew that warriors recovering from injury needed liver, not because they understood biochemistry, but because those who ate it healed faster. But fresh meat spoils in days, so women developed preservation techniques that would sustain communities through winter. Smoking meat not only preserved it, it fundamentally changed its properties. The smoke contained compounds with antimicrobial effects, preventing bacterial growth. When available, salt was used alongside herbs with natural preservative properties. Rosemary, sage, thyme. These women engineered underground storage pits at precise depths where temperature remained constant, the world's first refrigeration. They developed sensory tests for spoilage that modern microbiologists would recognize as valid. Smell, color, texture. But perhaps their greatest innovation was rendered fat, what we call tallow. Animal fat could be stored for months without refrigeration. It provided concentrated calories 9 per gram compared to 4 for protein or carbs. And it had medical applications. Fat-based salves protected wounds from infection. Mixed with charcoal, it treated burns. Combined with medicinal plants, it created the world's first topical antibiotics. Women were the knowledge keepers of which plants healed which wounds. Willow bark for pain, what we now know contains salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin. Yarrow to stop bleeding, plantain for skin infections, elderberry for immune support. They understood something modern medicine is only now rediscovering. Nutrition and medicine aren't separate. They're the same thing. The bone broth these women made for sick children contained collagen, amino acids, and minerals that modern research shows genuinely supports recovery from illness. This knowledge was sacred, passed from mother to daughter in whispered lessons. A woman who knew 200 medicinal plants wasn't just useful, she was irreplaceable. When infection meant death, when a simple wound could kill, these women stood between their people and extinction. Not with magic, not with prayer, with knowledge, with skill, with the same analytical thinking they used to track animals and predict weather. They were scientists before science had a name. But the most important thing these women hunted wasn't animals, it was the future. In prehistoric societies, raising children wasn't separate from survival work. It was survival work. From the moment a child could observe, they were learning. Not in classrooms, but through immersion in every aspect of survival. By age 4, children could identify dozens of edible and medicinal plants. They learned which berries were safe, which roots could be eaten, which fungi meant death. By 6, they were practicing with child-sized weapons, throwing accuracy, stalking techniques, reading tracks. By 10, they were contributing to food acquisition, setting snares, gathering birds' eggs, processing small game. By 15, they joined adult hunts, not as passengers, as contributing members of the team. But here's what made this system revolutionary. Women raised children communally. Breastfeeding wasn't exclusive to biological mothers. Women who were lactating would nurse each other's children. This created immunity transfer across the entire child population. Different women taught different skills based on their expertise. The best tracker taught tracking, the best medicine woman taught plant identification, the best hunter taught weapon use. Children learned from specialists, creating a generation with broader knowledge than any single parent could provide. And discipline was communal. Any adult could correct any child. This created consistent behavioral expectations and reinforced social bonds. Contrary to popular belief, both boys and girls learned hunting. Gender specialization came later, in adolescence, and even then wasn't absolute. Girls who showed exceptional hunting ability continued to hunt. Boys who excelled at craft work specialized in toolmaking. Skills determined roles, not arbitrary gender roles. But perhaps the most important thing mothers taught daughters wasn't physical skills. It was judgment. When to challenge leadership, how to mediate conflicts, which alliances to form, how to read people's intentions. In many prehistoric societies, councils of elder women made critical decisions about migration, resource allocation, and conflict resolution. Young women didn't automatically inherit this power. They earned it through demonstrated wisdom, successful hunts, and community respect. Unlike in many historical civilizations, aging didn't diminish a woman's value. It increased it. A woman in her 70s, too old to hunt, was a library of survival knowledge. She'd survived droughts, migrations, famines. She'd seen weather patterns repeat across decades. When an elder woman died, the community didn't just lose a person, they lost an irreplaceable database, which is why younger women apprenticed under elders for years, ensuring the knowledge transfer was complete. This system of raising generations communal, skill-based, and knowledge-intensive produced something remarkable. Children who were more competent at age 12 than many modern adults. So what happened? If women were such effective hunters, if this system worked for tens of thousands of years, why did it change? The answer is as simple as it is profound: farming. Around 10,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution didn't just change what humans ate, it changed the entire structure of society. Farming required staying in one place, it required constant labor, and it made pregnancy more frequent. Hunter-gatherer women with high mobility requirements typically spaced births 3 to 4 years apart. Farming women settled in one location, had children every 2 years. More children meant less mobility. Less mobility meant fewer women on hunts. As women's participation in hunting declined, men filled the gap. And as men dominated hunting, hunting became culturally coded as masculine. Within a few thousand years, the flexible, skill-based society had rigidified into the gender roles we recognize. Men hunt, women gather. And when humans started writing history, they wrote the world they saw, not the world that had existed for 200,000 years before. For centuries, archaeologists looked at graves with weapons and assumed male. Even when the bones told a different story, it took modern forensic techniques, DNA analysis, and yes, more women in archaeology to see what had been hidden in plain sight. Women weren't excluded from hunting because they couldn't do it. They were excluded because society changed in ways that made their participation impractical. But their capability never disappeared. It was just waiting. So why does any of this matter? Why should we care about women who lived 10,000 years ago? Because the story we tell about the past shapes what we believe is possible in the future. For generations, we taught children that men hunted and women gathered, that this was natural, inevitable, biological destiny. We now know that's false. For 95% of human history, gender roles were fluid, flexible, based on individual skill rather than arbitrary categories. The women who came before us weren't weak. They weren't passive. They weren't waiting to be protected. They were providers, strategists, leaders, healers, teachers. They brought down prey that outweighed them by hundreds of pounds. They mastered complex knowledge systems that meant life or death. They made decisions that kept entire communities alive. And they did it while carrying children, while nursing, while bleeding, while dealing with all the biological realities we're told make women unsuitable for demanding work. When we recover these stories, we don't just correct history, we expand possibility. We give every girl permission to be strong, to be strategic, to be fierce. We remind women that collaboration, the survival networks that sustained our ancestors, is still our superpower. We reclaim the knowledge that our great-grandmothers were not diminished by age but elevated by it. And we remind everyone that the gender roles we think of as traditional are actually quite recent. There are still hundreds of burial sites waiting to be re-examined, still thousands of stories waiting to be recovered. Every time a girl sees herself in these ancient women, every time she learns that her ancestors were powerful, something shifts. She stops asking, "Can I?" and starts asking, "How?" Because the answer was always there, in her bones, in her blood, in the legacy of 200,000 years of women who didn't just survive, they conquered. The incredible world of prehistoric women hunters wasn't a world of exceptions. It was the rule, and that changes everything.